This is the GICS Industry Workbench. It's an interactive dashboard that analyzes ETF holdings across GICS sector, industry group, industry, and sub-industries. I built this entirely with AdvisorClaw, no coding. Let me show you how I did. All right, so before we had a pretty dashboard like this, we needed data. The two pieces of data that we needed were the ETF holdings and the GICS mappings. The AI wrote two Python scripts, one to scrape Zacks.com for what each ETF holds. That you can actually see right here. It's 78 lines of code. I did not write this code. I told it we need a way to be able to pull down data. The second part of this, the second Python script it wrote was to parse a YCharts Excel file that mapped 3,900 plus tickers to their GICS sectors, industries, etc. Eventually, we will connect this to YCharts via API. This way, the data just flows right in. But for now, the advisor wanted this quickly, so it's just an upload feature, which looks like this from a coding perspective. But essentially, you pull that data down from YCharts and upload it right into the system, and it can now read that and sort all of that. And I literally just, as you can see here, here's the chat. I literally just said, here's the GICS data from YCharts. Can you parse this? And it builds it all out. So the first real outputs out of AdvisorClaw were HTML reports. Think of these like website reports, if you will. The AI generated one of these at a time, essentially feed it an ETF or a blend, and it would spit out the formatted HTML page with the sector breakdowns. This one is an example of what they look like. This one is just SPY. This is a equal weight of SPY, IWF, DSI, DGRO, DTD. This one was 70-30 DGRO to DTD, which was phenomenal, better than anything I had done at that point. So that's where I'm telling it here. It tells me Zacks has the full holdings for all 5 ETFs. I say, perfect, now combine these with the GICS data and generate the reports of those different blends I just showed you. But then I started thinking, and you can see what I typed in here. This works, but generating a new report every time I change weights is annoying. Can we make it interactive, something I just open and play with? And that's where it really surprised me. Because at this point, it builds out a prototype workbench. So really quick, here's the code for the prototype interactive workbench. Look at that. 600 plus, 663 lines of code. And this was the prototype here. From here, I can switch what ETF I'm looking at. I can blend them. Normalize, equal weight, whatever. But nothing was, and I had all the information I was looking for, but nothing was really sortable. So that's where we started getting into the iterations. So this is where it gets good. AdvisorClaw didn't just write one dashboard and call it done. We went through 6, 7 different versions of the workbench. Each time I'd use it, find something I wanted different and just ask. And the AI would build a new one. So at first, let's go back to our chat. Good start. Can we add a tree view that drills down through GICS hierarchy? And I go through sector, industry group, sector, subsectors. Originally, this is what I was looking at here. I wanted to be able to drill down into this further. And here's version 3 that came out. I can now have a sortable filter in here where I can search energy, give me the industry group that's energy. Let's just do oil and gas, boom. And it can fuel that all the way through. If I wanted to look at IWF instead, I can see what IWF looked like at those weights. If I wanted to 50-50 these and see what the weight looked like, it would look like that. So that was fun. Then I say, great, what about comparing 2 portfolios side by side? I want to see my blend against SPY or another benchmark. So it came out with version 4, which is here. So now I can actually compare this blend that I make to the benchmark. In this case, let's make the benchmark SPY. Let's make our portfolio a 50-50 blend of SPY and IWF. And now I can compare the major 11 sectors against the benchmark that I'm looking at. So my blend's got, about 25% more tech exposure, or 8% more on a differential basis. Great, that was cool too. So then I go in there and I say, all right, can I add ETFs on the fly without rebuilding? Like what happens if I want to add another ETF? I come in here and version 5, it has my type any ticker and add it into the system bar. Then I say, great, what if I want presets, like something that the advisor calls a dividend focus or equal weight? So then I jump into the most recent iteration. At this point, it spits me out version 6. Here's version 6 where I've got my presets. So the dividend portfolio is 70 DGRO, 33 DTD. You've also got a 60-40 SPY IWF portfolio that he wanted preset into the system. Now we've got all those presets as well. So again, I'm not coding anything. I'm just talking to the chat within the system and it's building everything out for me iteration by iteration. Alrighty, so let me show you what all those iterations built, at least at the point where I handed it off to the advisor so he could continue building on top of this with his own AdvisorClaw. That was the code for it. Here's the workbench itself. So first things first, the sector roll-up tab, he put in 15 or so ETFs that he wants to be able to see the GICS industries on really quick, also wants to be able to sort them so we can rank them by, let's say, who's got the most IT exposure. Boom, unsurprisingly, it's the Qs. If I want to see who's got the most financials exposure, boom, it's the DIA. So that's one tab it's got there. It's also got a master roll-up tab. Right now we're looking at SPY, but I can see what comprises of that in a nesting function, information technology, semis and semi equipment. Essentially what I've done is I've gone from the sector to the industry group to the industry subgroup and see all the holdings in here. If I wanted to compare that versus QQQ, for example, all I would have to do is come over here, take QQQ to 100, take SPY out, and now I can see if any of those holdings have changed, if the weights have changed. There's a stock file here where I can look up any stock and see where's the GICS information that's coming up and also what percentage of the portfolio is it that we're looking at. In Qs, it is 3.48. In SPY, it is 1.66. And then they also added an extra benchmarking comparison feature. So if I want to compare SPY to IWF, but I also want to look at it against SPHQ, now I'm doing that with the SPY or whatever other core portfolio that I have here on the left. And I can see that, all right, SPY's got 16% less exposure to IT, although it's got 5.65 more exposure than SPHQ. Again, the advisor can, and I'm sure he has added a ton of ETFs to this. So really at this point, I've handed it off to him and he's off and running with it here. So here's the thing. I'm not a developer. I don't write Python. I don't design architecture. I didn't do any of that for this project. I just described what my client needed, gave feedback on what worked and what didn't, and AdvisorClaw built it for me. This was 6 scripts, 7 different versions, a self-contained HTML dashboard, web server. I even created a full transfer package with documentation so I could take this off of my system and put it onto his. All this happened from just a conversation, all for a real RIA managing real money. This isn't just a tech demo. This is a tool that this advisor, 200-300 million out in Las Vegas, is actually using to manage their GICS sector exposure and overweight and underweight portfolios. Nobody had to write a line of code. On top of this, I also asked the system, I need to make a YouTube video on how I used you for this project. This video is used to show off how a simple user like me can build something like the workbench. AdvisorClaw also wrote me the script and told me what to film for this video as well. So this is a very powerful tool. Any RIA can use it for anything here. So ping us if you want to learn more.